Welcome into the weekend update edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I am Maurice Patton. That is David Wilson of the Robertson County Connection, because Wade Neely is somewhere between Pulaski and Dunlap, getting ready for Giles County's regular season finale, Region 4 3A championship matchup with host Sequatchie County. So it's a mule and a lunch to get over there from his spot. So David has graciously stepped in for Wade to be with me for the next couple of hours as we talk local, regional, and national sports. So, David, good afternoon. Thanks for joining me.
Always good to see you, Mo, and join in and fill in for Wade, making another appearance out of the bullpen. This, I think, my third or fourth of the last couple weeks. So, always excited to be with you and joining you and talking some local and national sports.
Absolutely, and that's what we'll be doing here for the next couple of hours. In the second hour, we will be joined by John Clay of the Lexington Herald-Leader. We're going to talk a little Kentucky football as the Wildcats get ready to come down I-75 South, taking on the Tennessee Volunteers at Neyland Stadium, and just kind of check the pulse of the Wildcats. I mean, they just dropped a tough one this past weekend to Auburn, and it's not been the season that Kentucky expected to this point. So just want to kind of get the pulse of that team coming to this weekend's matchup that, during the preseason, there was a lot of, there were a lot of eyes on it, a lot of interest in it, and some of that may have dwindled. But again, just want to check in with John and see where that team is right now. In the next segment, we will be joined by Charles Pulliam of the Williamson Herald, because there are a couple of region football championships that will be decided in Williamson County tonight, and I wanted to get Charles's thoughts on a couple of those and some high school football goings on in and around Franklin. So looking forward to speaking with him. We'll be talking high school football as the show progresses, also some NFL, some Major League Baseball, one team in particular, because David and I share the same allegiances to a certain team about 4 hours southeast of here. So we'll be talking about them getting their offseason started yesterday. Also, some other college football items that we'll touch on. Some college basketball came across our radar earlier today. Want to get to that as well. And while Wade is not with us right now, he will be with us for the final segment, because we could not leave you without our wonder slate as we take our shot at 10 college football games over this coming weekend, picking them against the spread. So stick around for that again in the final segment of the show. But that's what we're looking like here today, and we're looking forward to it. So let's go ahead and get started with yesterday's results and this weekend schedule on the rundown.
This is the Rundown.
Today's rundown is brought to you by Chip Walters of Exit Realty, Bob Lamb and Associates. The Brew Raider voice always wants to be your trusted advisor in real estate. Contact Chip at 615-542-1915 or through his website at choosechip.net. Chip Walters, proud to support youth sports across Middle Tennessee.
High school football results from Thursday night, and we're going to touch on a little bit, touch in a little bit more depth on some of these later in the show. But Antioch with a 55-6 win over Laverne. Clarksville defeated Clarksville Northeast 50-7. It was Coffee County 19, Blackman 14. Cookville with a 51-0 win over Wilson Central. Christ Presbyterian Academy defeated Davidson Academy 41-10. Green Hill, oh goodness, in a slugfest, defeated Mount Juliet 12-10. Montgomery Central downs Greenbrier 14-12. Harpeth with a 34-22 win over Hickman County. East Robertson defeated Jackson County 37-0 up in Gainesboro. Lebanon with a 49-31 win over Gallatin. It was Loretto 28, Mount Pleasant 12. Coverage of that one at mainstreetmurray.com. Marshall County in overtime holds off Pearl Cone 24-21. It was Nashville Christian 36, Donaldson Christian nothing. We mentioned this during yesterday's rundown. Maplewood with a 1-0 win over Republic officially. Republic forfeited out the final half of its season, so that is a forfeit victory for the Panthers there. Oakland bouncing back from that overtime loss last week to Ravenwood to defeat Riverdale 36-21. Rossview with a 24-0 win over Kenwood. It was Smyrna 37, Cane Ridge 8, Summertown 14, East Hickman 6, Creekwood with a comeback victory over White House 43-35, and Station Camp defeated Whites Creek 37-6. In men,
Moving on to me.
yes, yes.
Men's basketball is with the 83-77 win over Brescia. NBA action, the Grizzlies with a 122-99 win over the Milwaukee Bucks. In the NFL on Thursday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets get a much-needed win over the Houston Texans. Final score 21-13. And on the ice down at Bridgestone Arena, the Edmonton Oilers with a 5-1 win over the Nashville Predators.
High school football tonight. Springfield goes to Beach. All of these are 7 o'clock kickoffs unless we indicate otherwise. Springfield is at Beach. Montgomery Bell Academy goes to Brentwood Academy. Hillsborough is at Centennial. Ensworth travels to Christian Brothers down in Memphis. Clarksville Academy is hosting Mount Juliet. Dixon County goes to Clarksville Northwest. Eagleville is at Cornersville. Middle Tennessee Christian goes to Ezel Harding. Franklin hosting Overton at 7. Pope John Paul II goes to Franklin Road Academy. Battleground Academy is at Good Pasture. Columbia Academy travels to Grace Christian of Franklin. Not much of a trip, but it is a trip. Henry County goes to Hendersonville. McEwen is at Houston County. Hunters Lane is hosting Portland. Summit is at Independence in a South Williamson County showdown. And West Creek is at Kirkwood.
Cheatham County will take on Lawrence County at 7 o'clock. Glencliff at James Lawson. Wayne County at Liberty Creek, Columbia Central at Lincoln County. Lipscomb Academy at McCauley Stewart's Creek, making the trip over to McGavock. Page at Knowles. We'll have a little more of that one later with Charles. Brentwood at Ravenwood in the Battle of the Woods. Joe Burns makes the trip to Red Bull and Springs in a battle for the number 3 seed in Region 4-1A. Moore County at Richland, Giles County at Sequatchie County. Wade will have coverage of that one. Rockvale at Siegel at 7 o'clock. Franklin County at Spring Hill. East Nashville making a trip to face Metro's rival Stratford at 7 o'clock. Stewart County makes the trip to Pleasant View to face Sycamore. Friendship Christian on the road at the King's Academy. Father Ryan with the trip to Warren County at 7 o'clock. Community taking the trip to Watertown at 7. Providence Christian at Webb School at 7 o'clock. Trousdale County and Westmoreland, at 7 o'clock. And the one I will be at tonight, Fairview at White House Heritage.
In college football action tomorrow, it's an 11:45 start as Vanderbilt travels to the loveliest village on the plains, taking on the Auburn Tigers. Again, that's an 11:45 start. You can see it on the SEC network. At 1:30, you can hear this one on WANT FM 98.9. Cumberland takes on visiting Lindsey Wilson. At 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, Middle Tennessee State is at Texas El Paso. You can see it on the CBS Sports Network. At 4 o'clock on ESPN Plus, it's Austin Peay at North Alabama. At 5 on ESPN Plus, big matchup over at Nissan Stadium as UT Martin takes on Tennessee State in a Ohio Valley Conference / Big South matchup. 6:45 on the SEC Network, Kentucky is at Tennessee. Women's basketball action today. This is a 7:30 start in Brescia as the Cumberland Lady Phoenix travel up there to Owensboro, taking on Brescia. Again, 7:30 tip there. Saturday, Cumberland is at Oakland. Well, Cumberland plays Oakland City. This is also in Owensboro. This is a 3:30 start on Saturday. And at 3, Fisk is at Freed Hardeman on Saturday. In women's basketball.
Today's men's basketball action. Cumberland takes on William Carey University. That is based in Mississippi in Montgomery, Alabama at 4 o'clock. University of Pikeville at UT Southern at 6 p.m. Saturday, State Cumberland at Faulkner University in Alabama, 7 p.m. tip-off. Fisk at Freed Hardeman at 5 o'clock. University of Cumberland's at UT Southern at 2 o'clock. To the NHL on Saturday, the Colorado Avalanche make the trip to Bridgestone Arena for a 7 o'clock puck drop. to the hardwood for the Memphis Grizzlies. They head up to Philadelphia for a 6:30 tip against Joel Embiid and the 76ers. Then on Sunday in NFL, it is the New England Patriots coming to Music City to face the Tennessee Titans at 12 o'clock on Fox.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is your weekend rundown. Your top story brought to you, as always, by the fine folks over at Piggly Wiggly and Neely's Mill in Columbia. Be sure and check out their delicious daily deli lunch options available from 8 a.m. from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. Don't want to make those folks work any harder than they already do. 11 till 6 lunch. Also, hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10% at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill, Columbia, bringing you our top story. You know, we talked earlier this week about the Connecticut Sun and Stephanie White going their separate ways. Well, Stephanie White's way was to her home state of Indiana, where she has been named coach of the Indiana Fever for the second time. She replaces Christy Sides, who was dismissed recently as one of, I think, 7 coaching changes in the WNBA since the conclusion of the regular season. So the Fever is the first team to hire a coach since that flurry of dismissals has taken place. And they got, you know, pretty much a known commodity. Again, Stephanie White played her college, but she was a high school phenom in Indiana. She played her college ball at Purdue. She's been an assistant coach and a head coach with the Fever. Stepped away for a stint here in town at Vanderbilt that did not go well. She was here from 2016 to 2021, and I can tell you that there are people that followed Vanderbilt over that stretch that are surprised that she's coaching anywhere. I don't know how it didn't work. I don't know why it didn't work, but it didn't work. But she has had success back in the professional ranks. Again, she was with the Connecticut Sun this year and led that team to the WNBA tournament postseason semis. So, and now she's back joining up with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston and what is thought to be a really talented Fever roster. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
It feels like with the WNBA, it's kind of a lot like the NHL, where these coaches just get recycled throughout these, these programs, these organizations. Obviously, Stephanie White is a known commodity, definitely to the people up into Indiana, as you mentioned. But I think she has the ability to manage the star power that's on that team. Obviously, with Caitlin Clark, you're going to have eyes and cameras on that organization from top to bottom. Just kind of surprised to see so many moves, as you mentioned, across the WNBA, Mo. 7 coaches losing their job. Most of them actually made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime an organization makes the playoffs, you're going to probably stick with the status quo and continue to build on that. Not in the WNBA this offseason.
Apparently not, man. And I'm not sure what exactly is driving that. I don't know if it's, that there's more eyes on it and they feel like they've got to capitalize on that. But I don't understand all of the moves that took place. Obviously, all 4 of your teams that did not make the playoffs changed coaches. Atlanta again made a change, Connecticut also, and I'm forgetting somebody, but again, 7 coaching changes in the 12-team league since the end of the regular season. So it's going to definitely be a new look WNBA in 2025, and not just with the expansion team out at Golden State. So definitely, there are a lot of eyes on that league all of a sudden. There are a lot of eyes on women's basketball, both at the collegiate and professional level. And maybe some of these teams just feel the need to try to put their best foot forward even more so. I'm not sure exactly what the driving factor has been in all of the coaching changes. It feels really bizarre, but we'll see. Those people know their teams a lot better than we do, so we'll see how that goes. Let's go ahead and take a break here on Main Street Sports today. presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. And when we return to the Lee Company Studios, we will be with Charles Pulliam of the Williamson Herald talking a little high school football. Stay tuned after this. Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com.
Step into the Lionel retail store at Ockley Mills, Nashville, and you'll be captivated by all the magic of the 123-year history of Lionel trains. Whether you're already a train enthusiast or just getting started, Lionel will energize your love for trains. NASCAR fan? Come check out your local Lionel station to learn all there is to know about model trains and die-cast NASCAR collectibles. Visit nashville.lionel.com or call 615-455-9399.
So Busy Bee is a very close-knit family. We fight just like every family does. We have arguments, but we always come out with a solution to the problems. We don't just fight about what we want, we fight about what customers need. We want to make sure that every customer we go to is more than satisfied. And that doesn't just start whenever we show up at their door, that starts when we show up every day at work. We want to make sure that we are serving our customers to the best of our ability.
Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
With Lee Company technology, the best handymen are hands-off. Lee Company techs have been using visual findings and other smart technology tools for years to add transparency and virtually take customers along. You see what we see, whether we're in a crawl space or on a roof. With Lee Company, technology helps us help you, no matter what's happening in the world or at your house.
He shoots, and he scores!
The weekend update continues here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm Maurice Patton. That's David Wilson sitting in for the traveling Wade Neely, who you can catch on Pulaski Citizen Live later tonight with the broadcast of the Giles County, Sequatchie County Region 4 3A Championship game. So be sure and check that out. David and I are soldiering on, and we are pleased to be joined by, we introduced Teresa Walker as the queen of Tennessee sports media when we have her on our show. Well, if that is the case, then Charles Pulliam is definitely the king of Williamson County sports media. He joins us. He is the sports editor at Williamson Herald. So glad to have him with us because there are a couple of really high-powered matchups taking place in Wilco tonight. Charles, good afternoon.
Man, just even being in the realm of mentioning with the Teresa Walker, holy cow, what are you thinking, man? That's pretty neat, though. I do appreciate it. Yeah, happy to be on the chat. It's gosh, this is a big night here in Williamson County. I tell you what,
it is a big night. Where are you going to be?
Well, that was the thing. I was just figuring. So I really, in a way, I wanted to be at that Great Summit Independence matchup because that's a winner advances kind of thing, and that's pretty special. You don't really have a lot of those last regular season games, win and go on kind of matchups. But I got to be at that Battle of the Woods. So Ravenwood hosting Brentwood. I'm going to be there. Region 6A title on the line. So many great games throughout the county, though, too. You look over at Nolensville, Page going to be playing there. Again, I wish I could be in 3 or 4 spots at once. Let's just put it that way.
This would be a great night for that. Let's talk a little bit more about that Battle of the Woods to start with Brent at Raven. Ravenwood trying to close out a 10-0 regular season, coming off of that 32-31 overtime win over at Oakland this past weekend. I don't know if baffled is the right word, but I will tell you, I have been impressed with the way, you know, the saying in sports is when you've got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. Or no, Ravenwood has 2 quarterbacks, and they're both juniors, Maverick Chance and Femi Babalola. And I got it out right. Congratulations to me.
It always kind of gets you when you first approach it. If you try to read it, it'll get you. Yeah.
Babalola. It's not that hard, but it was Femi with the 2-point conversion pass for the win last Friday night over at Oakland. I was actually able to pull that up for the last couple of minutes of it, and as good a throw as you will see at any level, man. Put it where his guy could get it and nobody else, and his guy got it for the win. Will Hester rolling the dice as he is wont to do. It's not the first time that he's done it, but that team's coming into this game with a whole lot of momentum. Brentwood's no slouch. They've not lost since week 2 against Brentwood Academy.
Exactly. Well, you kind of interestingly how you mentioned about the 2 quarterback setup there. On the one side, Ravenwood, obviously with Femi and Maverick. Maverick's just that really bulky kind of guy that can get you the short yardage or burst through as needed. Femi's kind of getting that more of a polished touch, I think, in terms of throwing the ball. When you got targets like a Donovan Starr, a Ben Hubbard, I mean, that makes life pretty easy. You just got to get it in the vicinity. But, you know, Femi didn't have the most perfect game. I think he was 9 of 22, about 185 yards. Even Coach Hester talked about it, how he was kind of like, yeah, you know, it wasn't as polished as we would like to see. But, hey, when the play had to be made, this young man stepped up and made the play. And he sure did, winning in overtime at Oakland in a matchup with the top teams in Class 6A. I mean, this is the kind of matchup that, in a way, we kind of hope to see again, because that was a great high school football game. You mentioned on the other side about these guys from Brentwood. That's another 2 quarterback setup over there. I really think J.C. White, the junior, is kind of taken a lead role a little bit more on this, because he had a great game last week. They're able to beat an Independence team in a tough matchup, 20-6. J.C. White throws for 3 touchdowns, about 243 yards, goes 15 of 20. One of his better performances under center out there. But at the same time, you got one of the best athletes in the state at senior, Cannon Kinder. Cannon's the reigning, decathlon a state champion. And, you know, he could do a little bit of everything too. Both these guys, you know, have their moments. And I remember talking to Coach Finch, way back, it seems forever now, but, you know, 8 weeks ago, as they're getting into it, it's like, well, we know that JC's great at this. We know Cannon's great at this. And they're still finding ways to get both these guys on the field. But I feel like JC might be one of those guys who's kind of coming in and throwing the ball a little better, earning that spot a little bit. But, you know, you're still going to see all 4. And that's what kind of makes this matchup kind of neat. And just watching a bunch of quarterbacks make plays here too. And you got versatility across the board. A Gavin Nelson at Brentwood. He's the running back, senior guy, been there doing everything, but he leads the team in receiving and rushing. So, you know, there's a lot of fun storylines to go with here. And if you're on either defense, who do you stop and how and when? But these guys are loaded with defenders ready for it too. I'm kind of excited for a potentially good game. But it's hard to say that Ravenwood doesn't have that edge, especially coming off a couple losses here to Brentwood last year, including that big 6A quarterfinal matchup. So I think they got a little bit of it. Plus, it's at Ravenwood. You know, that atmosphere is going to be one of a kind. So it's just going to be a great game, I think.
Yeah, Charles, I'm glad you kind of mentioned that emotional aspect of it. Obviously, Ravenwood coming off a huge emotional win last week down in Murfreesboro against Oakland. Just kind of talk about that emotional well-being, two really hard games in your season. Obviously, going to play for a region championship tonight against a really good team led by Clint Finch. Kind of talk about that emotional aspect for Ravenwood coming into tonight's matchup. And then secondly, second part of this question, Clint Finch has done a great job this year. He graduated a lot of his roster last year, a lot of seniors on that team, and here they are battling for a region championship tonight. So kind of talk about that Ravenwood perspective and obviously the job that Clint Finch has done this year with the Bruins.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, thinking of coming off that win, you go back a week prior, you knock off a really good Franklin team that's better than ever, a loaded team, loaded up with lots of seniors that went through all that big losing streak, nearly breaking through, and sure enough, they've cemented that third spot in this region here. So that was a good test coming out of that bye week for Ravenwood, and it just kind of kept building. They wanted to see how great they were in that, in terms of a measuring stick, what better in 6A than playing Oakland at home. Get that win, and now you get to close out with that best rivalry around, really kind of thing. So I was talking to Elliot Hampton, who's one of the seniors there on that defensive side, and he talked about just kind of like a crescendo of a finish to the regular season here. We got a great region win against Franklin. You get to see what you guys are really made of when you go to Oakland, pick up that win. You beat Franklin. Now there's one more checklist item here in the regular season, and that's knocking off your biggest rival in Brentwood. These two teams have been 5-5 in the last 10 matchups going back to 2017. And at the same time, it's still that close. Just last year, I still can't think, thinking about being at Brentwood in that 6A quarterfinal. That was a 27-20 game. Femi kind of broke through in that one as a sophomore quarterback as well. These guys are juiced up and I think ready to go. And when you get a win in overtime at Oakland just before the regular season finish, I mean, I tell you what, the buildup and what's in the juices flowing there, as Dr. Qualls might say, would be just one of a kind. So pretty excited to see what those guys do. Obviously, they have all the momentum, and you're playing at home on top of that. You want to go into the playoffs on a high, and I think they got a really good potential. But I really think this might not be the first or the last matchup we see between these two schools, because they are kind of leading the way. And that goes right into the Clint Finch-led Brentwood Bruins side. These guys are 8-1. Fantastic showing here. Everybody thought, hey, they're not going to be as good as last year's state semifinal team. They lost all but one guy from that starting setup. Mason Ball leading the way here as the one returning starter, but at the same time, everybody's been that next man up mentality. It's been really really great to see Coach Finch and just kind of how that program underneath him and those assistants is really about like a loyalty kind of thing where, hey, when your turn comes, you have to be ready. Everybody's lined up. And sure enough, you got all these guys stepping into great play here. So you can't discredit how great of a job that guy's done to put this team back in a position to try to play for a region title once again. So again, so many great things on the line here. And I'm just excited about tonight because it's going to be a good one.
And the thing about it, Charles, that's, again, not the only great game in the area tonight.
Oh, man,
because you've got a Page team that has given up 13 points all year. Going to Nolensville, trying to salt away a Region 6 5A championship and an undefeated mark as well. Page going in there 9-0. The Knights 6-3. And I think if we had talked this time last week, everybody would have expected the Knights to be going into this game 7-2. The Summit Spartans said, not so fast, my friend, with a 20-13 stunner this past Friday night. Where do you feel like Paul Derrick's crew is from a mental standpoint coming off of that loss? I know I talked to him after the game, and he said it doesn't change anything. Everything that we want to do is still in front of us. It was a non-region game, and obviously it was, and obviously all of that is right. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, this is that matchup too, where it's really gone back and, well, not really necessarily back and forth, but just a great, in county region rival kind of thing. The buildup over the last couple of years has been pretty special. It's been pretty one-sided with Nolensville falling to Page all but once in every meeting here. You know, they lost, let's see, they won 27-21, I think, back in 2022. But the last 2 games have gone to Page. At the same time, when you're a Nolensville team, this was all about trying to get to this position. And I think that Summit game was kind of almost more of a wake-up call at the same time, because they've been riding a little high, finding some big wins. And when you have a senior quarterback, a Jack Dever, he's done a great job leading this offense, but he's another one of those guys we were talking about, Brentwood, just kind of waiting your turn. He's stepped into this role for the first time this year, and that's a big thing to kind of take over. And he's had some mistakes, had some good plays, and now it's really about, hey, we need you at a complete 100% leading this offense. And he's got some weapons, but I think still that Summit game, I believe it was a Caleb Farr, who's just one of those great high school football players. Nolensville's got several of those guys, a Landon Smotherman, a Carson Kelly, a Josh Hicks, guys that you just know are studs on Friday nights. But Farr ended up getting hurt in that Summit matchup. And I know that was one of those pieces that you got to overcome. And at the same time, now you got to see who steps up and fills in some big shoes there. So I'm excited to see what Nolensville can do again. This is an atmosphere at home where there's always a little bit of an edge in these all Williamson County matchups to that home team. But for Page, how do you not mention they've given up 2 touchdowns? They've given up 2 offensive big plays this year. You're fortunate to break 50 yards of offense playing this team. It is fascinating to see, and they're just a team on a mission. We said it last year. They were on a mission. The year before, they were essentially on a mission. After 3 straight silver balls, I think it's all about trying to find that last one. And these guys are loaded and ready to go. We always talk about an Eric Hazard, a Brendan Ains, a William Webush. Actually, Ains flipping his commitment from Wisconsin to Tennessee just yesterday. So all these different things coming into fruition. These guys have been playing together for a very, very long time, and their camaraderie is through the roof. I mean, this is a team atmosphere from start to finish. When you think about getting to play 15 games back to back to back, they got an extra season under their belts compared to most. So the edge is always to Page until somebody proves us wrong. But I just don't think anything's going to be proved wrong this year, because this is a team just loaded up. And I love Mitchell Grandjean, the junior quarterback, kind of stepping in. We talked about guys over these last couple of weeks that have made some strides and maybe being that go-to guy, JC White at Brentwood. Femi's kind of taken over a little more of that offensive side when you need to throw the ball at Ravenwood. And here, Mitchell Grandjean's one of those guys at Page who also is just like, hey, I'm ready to do what I need to do so William Webush could focus on defense a little more. And at the same time, it's about that time when we see a little more Brendan Ains and Eric Hazard on the offensive side of the ball as well, too. Because, hey, when you got players like this that are versatile, you need your best guys on the field at all times, and these guys are starting to break through. Brendan Ains had a couple touchdowns last week against Centennial in that lopsided win. Hazard's up there blocking for him. Expect to see him flushed out in some tight end packages, things like that too. It's just kind of that fun, scary side of Page ball now. I'm pretty excited about that one, and I wish I could watch that as well.
Yeah, Charles, I'm glad you didn't let Mo off the hook right there and talk about that Page defense that's pitched 7 shutouts this year. Kind of reminisce of that early 2000s Ravens defense. You might not cross midfield against those guys. I'm glad you mentioned that, but also kind of talk more in depth about that offense as well. As you mentioned, there's some pieces on there that can put some points on the scoreboard and play complementary football to that defense and special teams.
Oh, definitely. And there's just so many guys that do anything. One thing, I met the Odie parents a couple times, but Isaac Odie is just a freshman out there, one of those young running backs making a name for himself. He's carving out a lot of time. Again, the weapons list and the balance across the board. You could plug in any one of these defenders into, the offensive side, but it really starts, I think, with these guys in the trenches, and that's Jake Rathbone, the junior lineman. He's been an anchor absolutely for a couple seasons now. He learned a ton from a Ronan O'Connell playing at Clemson, some of these great guys going through. And then obviously, Dad Charles is one heck of a former lineman himself. So these guys have just kind of been growing into it. But, Jake Rathbone, Jordan Curl, Austin Johnson, Eli Whitson, Connor Kaufman, those guys up front. I had Coach Rathbone on my show actually on Monday, and he talked about how Brendan Ains would have had 1,500 yards this season already if he got to just run the ball constantly with those guys up front. And I think really just about anybody could. Ains talked about one of his touchdowns against Centennial, which is no slouch. He wasn't touched on a run-in, an 8 yards scoring touchdown, and he wasn't touched. That just shows, one play of how dominant those guys up front can be. And it really talks about a Rathbone-led team, coach and son. I think Jake's really kind of turned into one of those big leaders behind a Hazard and a Naines, guys like that. And you just love those hardworking linemen like that. I know Mo and I always talk about like a Joe Williams. We always got to mention the linemen, and those guys make it happen.
Charles, you talked about this team coming off of 3 consecutive state runner-up finishes, and everybody talks about making the next step, but not everybody does. They've really rededicated themselves to getting back there again and getting the gold ball this time around. And again, not everybody gets that opportunity for that storybook ending, let alone writes it. I mean, what is it about this team that has allowed them to actually go forth with, we're not going to be denied? Again, plenty of folks talk it.
Yeah, I think something has to be said about obviously the leadership, Coach Rathbone and his staff constantly pushing that, hey, we are a team loaded with stars. We just talked about an Ains now going to a Tennessee, and he's going to make an impact there. You got Hazard going to Louisville, Weebush jumping around there too. All these spots that these giant D1 kind of guys that we're going to enjoy watching on Saturdays and maybe beyond. These guys can do it all, but are willing to take a step back for everyone to do it. And that's something that's kind of built over these last couple of years. It's one thing to make it to a championship. It's another thing to make it back and then back again. And that's that team aspect of how close these guys are. And yeah, a Hazard, an Ains, a Weebush, those are 3 that we say all the time, and they could be involved in every single play, but they like taking a back seat. A good example is an Eric Hazard, Mr. Football finalist last year. He's out there on special teams on kick returns and things like that, just because I want to do what's best for the team. And he's willing to take a step back. He's willing to play here, there, wherever. And I think that kind of trickles right on down through everybody. And that's inspired some of these younger guys. I mentioned that young freshman in Odie. You got, even Mitchell Grangine getting the opportunity to kind of become the guy he's been. There's been no forced anything on this team. And that camaraderie is just one of a kind. And I think that's what really makes this possible. And it all starts with the Coach Rathbone and how he's pushed those guys and that staff and just being really unselfish. It's pretty neat to see.
Charles Pulliam, sports editor of the Williamson Herald, joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. And Charles, as you mentioned earlier, under normal circumstances, a win or go home type matchup would be the headliner on this Friday night, as you've got with Summit going to Independence for the 4th and final playoff berth out of Region 6-6A. But when you've got 2 other matchups that are going to be for region championships, each of which involve a 9-0 squad, then Summit and Indy kind of get relegated to the undercard to some degree. But this is, and I'm going to be fortunate enough to be at this one. This is going to be, especially between 2 rivals, 2 South Williamson County rivals like this. This is going to be a war, man. Well,
and truly, that just to be in that position, and we mentioned a Franklin team, latching onto that 3rd spot, being right above these guys in terms of where they're finishing in some region wins here. And in terms of that region, it's so neat to see. Obviously, there's an Overton that has to be in that as well too, and poor Overton at that sense
Mhm.
too, because those guys are just they've kind of become I don't even want to go that far, but anyway, thinking of Summit and Indy in this win or go home true matchup in week 10, you can't really paint a better one for a rivalry contest. This is a neighborhood battle. They've split the last two, and both teams, both programs, both coaches are so worthy of representing in the playoffs. It's really going to come down to a war, like you said. And for once, we get a Summit team that actually kind of has some guys back. Some of that health-wise is finally kind of there. Mason McElhaney returning last week, having those 3 big touchdowns. When he has some pieces, when he gets to go, that's a dangerous guy and one of the more dangerous guys in the county. On the other side, thinking of a Matthew Horner, I think he's kind of one of those future QBs we really get to keep an eye on the independent side. I'm just this is when I rank them, it's not like a clear 1, 2, or 3. This is like a 1A, 1B kind of thing in terms of games I would like to go, and featured games for Williamson County. That one is my B. And then 1C is the Page Nolensville one. And, there's just so many I would like to see. And I know Franklin, for example, is playing Overton, but they have a big, they're going to talk about their last championship team tonight in a celebratory fashion too. So that's kind of fun to just go back and revisit. Was it 2003, I think, 2004, somewhere in there? But they're going to just, they're going to talk that team over. And so that's kind of fun too. And that's just a fun atmosphere to be around with the history of stuff. So there's just so much going on in Williamson County. And the idea that only one, either Summit or Independence, gets to advance, I'm kind of bummed out about it. But like you said, there's going to be everything left on the field there. You're going to have to scrape up either one of these teams off the field to get into that playoffs and play one more time.
David?
Yeah, last thing for me, Charles, you kind of mentioned in your preview for this week about all these great matchups that for Summit in particular, you're getting players back that have been injured throughout the course of the year. Just kind of talk about that, those guys in particular that they have coming back, and does that give them an edge tonight as they take on Independence?
I think the edge really that stands out to me is getting some of that momentum from knocking off Nolensville just last week. I mean, these guys have been, just itching to get some kind of momentum going, and whoever is on the field, it's like, hey, we just need some confidence building stuff. And when you beat a talented Nolensville team in the running for a region championship against, one of the best teams in the state in Page, but at the same time, to just be on that level of play in terms of just finding that confidence, I think that's where you get a little bit of an edge. Independence battled and did a great job against Brentwood. Brentwood had the 3 touchdowns early that were the difference. It was a 26 game. That just shows how gritty that Independence team can be. There's been some offensive struggles there. Just scoring the ball, just moving the ball consistently is something that I feel like is a challenge. But I think now both these teams are kind of hitting right where they potentially could be at some of their best play of the season. And that's kind of neat because now, hey, one of them gets to advance. Again, I think a Mason McElhaney at Summit is kind of the edge factor. He is just one of those guys that can get it done. I've talked to him a couple of years in a row now and just how to be a leader. And he's got one of those leadership styles. He was actually one of my Heart of the Team award winners kind of setups for my paper here. And just thinking about how he became that, it's because the guys follow him and he's willing to lay everything on the line for him. I think he kind of gets you a little edge, and he got some good confidence in that win just last week against a tough Nolensville team.
Charles Pulliam of the Williamson Herald. You can find him on Twitter at CS Pulliam. And he isn't everywhere, but it sure feels like it, man. When you are in and around Williamson County, he does a fantastic job. When I grow up, I want to be just like him. But Charles, we appreciate you taking some time with us this afternoon. I know you got a lot going on, and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me so much. Hey, I learned it all from the Mo Patton School of Journalism here in Middle Tennessee. Well, you got to give that shout out to a Joe Williams too. I mean, those guys, they told me how it's done, and I just kind of follow suit.
Listen to you. You're being too nice, man. But hey, we'll catch up, man. Thank you.
Sounds good. Have fun tonight. I'll see you guys soon.
That'll work. Hey, when we continue here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, David and I will take a look at some of last night's high school action and the significance of some of these victories. So stay tuned when we return to the Lee Company studios after this.
Do you wanna be a bad man? Yes, you do. Do you wanna taste sweet salvation underneath the summer moon? Do you need another hand now? Yes, you do. Go see Miss Josie down on Columbus Avenue. All right, Columbus Avenue.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
So Busy Bee is a very close-knit family. We fight just like every family does. We have arguments, but we always come out with a solution to the problems. We don't just fight about what we want, we fight about what customers need. We want to make sure that every customer we go to is more than satisfied. And that doesn't just start whenever we show up at their door, that starts when we show up every day at work. We want to make sure that we are serving our customers to the best of our ability.
With Lee Company technology, the best handymen are hands-off. Lee Company techs have been using visual findings and other smart technology tools for years to add transparency and virtually take customers along. You see what we see, whether we're in a crawl space or on a roof. With Lee Company, technology helps us help you, no matter what's happening in the world or at your house.
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com. The Weekend Update continues here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That is David Wilson sitting in for Wade Neely, who will make a cameo appearance later in the show. But for now, David and I are going to continue the high school football talk, as again, there were some pretty big games last night, some high stakes stuff as the regular season comes to a close. The first night of week 11, Oakland, we talked about their 32-31 overtime loss to Ravenwood just now with Charles Pulliam of the Williamson Herald. Well, the Patriots bounced back in pretty dominant fashion with a 36-21 win over Riverdale last night to win Region 3-6A. And Oakland has been in 5 of the last 6 state championship games. They've won 3 of those. So regardless of what happens during the regular season, you just kind of feel like Kevin Creasy is going to have that team there until somebody drives a stake through their heart, basically.
Yeah, and that's a nice bounce back performance for them after last week's overtime loss at home to Ravenwood. As you mentioned, they've tried and true. They've been there and done that before. They know how to face, answer, I guess, and bounce back from the adversity and win yet another region title. They got a little revenge, if I'm correct, because Riverdale won this matchup last year between those two Murfreesboro heavyweights against Oakland. So nice response for them to end their regular season, obviously head back into the postseason to try to get back to the Class 6A championship game and win it this time around.
Absolutely. And you best believe Creasy reminded his guys of that week 11 loss a year ago to the Warriors in the run up to last night's matchup. We spoke with Josh Crouch of Green Hill yesterday on Coach's Corner as the Hawks were getting ready to take on Mount Juliet for the 4-6A championship. Green Hill going into that game. Well, both those teams going into that game 9-0. 12-10 Green Hill, the final. And I don't know a whole lot of details on it, but 12-10 kind of spells it all out there.
I think that fits the description of last night's weather forecast for those of us who were out there in the elements last night. But you have to give credit to that Green Hill coaching staff and that team. I watched a little bit of their game a couple weeks ago when they played Gallatin on their Friday Night Rivals game of the week in kind of sloppy, similar elements. And, there's recipes for success or for that team. I believe they've been without Aaron Mattingly for a while, and they've just chugged along and continued to grind out wins and get better. And that's a statement win over a Mount Juliet team that, Mo, you're a Sports Writers Association voter, so am I. That Mount Juliet team gets a lot of respect across the state. And so Green Hill with a nice performance and a nice win to kind of maybe wake some people up across the state about how really talented they are and how they're slowly developing that program.
Absolutely. Again, we spoke with Coach Crouch yesterday. This is their 5th year of varsity football, and they turn in a 10-0 regular season, a 4-6A championship. They have done a lot in a short period of time and knocking off a really good and, like you said, a highly respected Mount Juliet program. It really speaks volumes for where the Hawks have come in a short period of time. 5-4A championship matchup. Marshall County finishes up the year 10-0, but they have to go overtime, knocking off Pearl Cone 24-21 last night. It tends to be those two at the top of that region, since that grouping has come together here over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm very familiar with this region, as you know, considering that two of my area teams, Greenbrier and White House, participate in this region, and talking to John Elmore and Ryan Hamilton at Greenbrier and White House throughout the year. It's a murderer's row in that region. You got Station Camp in there as well, Creekwood, who beat White House last night for the final spot in that region. It's just a do or die. It's every Friday night you can get beat by somebody if you don't bring your A game. And as you mentioned, Marshall County and Pearl Cone are at the top of that region, and they're probably alongside Upperman, two of the top 3 teams in the state. There's no way in my mind that these two teams do not play each other again at some point to try to get back to Chattanooga. Obviously, Pearl Cone lost their first 2 games of the year to CPA and NBA, and everybody's thinking that the sky is falling. I live 10 minutes from Pearl Cone, and I know there was a lot of worry. Oh man, they're not as good as they were last year. That Pearl Cone team is still really talented. Javion Kennard is a really talented player. They brought in LJ Funk to be the quarterback, and he's slowly progressed. And for them to take Marshall County to overtime last night in Lewisburg, I think that says a lot about that Pearl Cone team and what they can do if they continue to get better down here in the stretch.
Tony Brunetti schedules games for this time of year and for the next 5 weeks. And if you got caught up in them getting beat by an undefeated CPA team and an NBA team that is traditionally a Division 2-3A power, they've kind of dropped a little bit this year, but expect Marty Uverard to have the big rig headed back in the right direction, by the way. But if you got caught up in those 2 losses, then you really missed out on what Pearl Cone is about. And this won't be the last that we hear of them again over the next few weeks. Like you said, I would be shocked if we don't see a rematch here in 2 or 3 weeks. Speaking of great coaching jobs, Dan Winfrey got to Summertown a month before the season opener last year. The Eagles went 1-9. Last night, Summertown defeated Region 5-2A champion East Hickman 14-6 to claim the number 2 spot in that region heading into the playoffs. The Eagles 8-2 this year, from 1-9 to 8-2. If there has been a better turnaround this year, show it to me, because I want to give those folks credit as well. But Dan Winfrey and that coaching staff down there and the buy-in that those kids have had is second to none, and my hat is off to them.
Yeah, I can't speak from the Summertown perspective. That is all you, but I will say give them credit. Obviously, beating East Hickman. East Hickman is a really good football team that not a lot of people talk about. They beat White House Heritage, who was in my area the second week of the year, and beat them convincingly. There's a lot of people that feel like that East Hickman team could go toe-to-toe with East Robertson, wink, wink, in the Class 2A playoffs at some point. So give Summertown credit for obviously a great turnaround, as you mentioned. Anytime that you have a turnaround like that, from a 1-win season to an 8-win season, that says a lot about the coaching staff and the buy-in from the players believing in their coaching staff and the principles in the system that's before them.
Absolutely. 2 other teams finishing up undefeated regular seasons. Clarksville downing Northeast 50-7 last night, winning that Region 7 6A championship, and the aforementioned Christ Presbyterian Academy defeating Davidson 41-10 to go 10-0 and win the D2 AA Middle Region Championship.
I want to gloss over one thing in that Clarksville matchup. Isaac Shelby, who is the head coach for the Wildcats, a former Clarksville alum, picked up his 100th career win on the sidelines at Clarksville last night. So Calvin White from Main Street Clarksville had all your coverage. Be sure to go check him out on social media and at Main Street Clarksville on our Main Street Peps page. But wanted to give him credit. Anytime you can win 100 wins in one place, that's special. I know Dustin Wilson at Springfield accomplished that a couple weeks ago against Hunter's Lane. So you have to reward those. Anytime you reach 100, triple digits is a lot.
Triple digits is a lot, and to go triple digits and to go 10-0 in the same game, that's a pretty impressive 2 milestones in one night kind of deal there. So yeah, congratulations to Coach Shelby there. And again, check out Calvin White's work at Main Street Clarksville for more coverage on that. Hour number 1 of the weekend update here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, is in the books. When we return to the Lee Company studio for hour number 2, David and I will try to, kind of keep things measured, but we'll get into a topic that's kind of near and dear to our hearts. So stick around when we come back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vilai Saisuka, CEO and founder of Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee here in Murfreesboro. We offer foot and ankle care from ingrown toenails to diabetic foot wounds. We also fix ankle fractures and things like that.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com.
With Lee Company technology, the best handymen are hands-off. Lee Company techs have been using visual findings and other smart technology tools for years to add transparency and virtually take customers along. You see what we see, whether we're in a crawl space or on a roof. With Lee Company, technology helps us help you, no matter what's happening in the world or at your house.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today.
So, you want to be a part of the Busy Bee team, huh? Well, how do you see yourself fitting into the organization? Oh, I get it. You want to be a weather bee.
Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
It's hour number 2 of the weekend update here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That's David Wilson sitting in for Wade Neely, who we will hear from in the final segment of the show as Wade and I get into our Wonder Slate 10 picks from this weekend's college football games against the spread. Last week we did pretty decent, so maybe we're getting a little credibility here. I don't know, but it's definitely a week-to-week thing. Anyway, right now, David and I are going to talk a little Atlanta Braves hot stove off-season activity because the Braves got things started. The engraving wasn't quite cool on the Los Angeles Dodgers trophy from the World Series when it was announced that Alex Anthopoulos had sent outfielder / DH Jorge Soler west to the Angels in exchange for pitcher Griffin Canning, to which your response might be, who? And I understand that. He's got a career record, 9 games under 500. But, in AA we trust. So, but David, as you look at this team coming out of 24 and going into 25, are the priorities starting pitching, shortstop, and outfield? Not necessarily in that order, but are those the 3 priorities, specifically left field?
Yeah, I would say that's the case. I think you have to take a little glimmer of hope in the Soler news that Ronald Acuña's knee will be healthy. That will allow him to maybe play the outfield quicker than we may have expected. I know at the end of the year press conference, AA and Brian Snickers said that they might be patient with his return, but I think this is by trading an outfielder from that surplus of depth that Ronald will be able to come back sooner. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of Braves fans would like to see a new shortstop. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. Orlando Arcia's contract is so cheap. And obviously with the payroll rising and continuing to rise, they might ride it out with him at shortstop as long as everybody else stays healthy around him. But it seems like the same problem for the Braves for the last couple of years is finding that third outfielder to pair with Michael Harris and a healthy Ronald Acuña Jr. And then on the pitching side as well, we've kind of mentioned this off air. Do you bring Charlie Morton back? You're a believer that Max Fried is gone. I'm not so sure he is gone. I feel like there is some money that can be spent there. And there's some other options for free agency at pitching as well. One, Walker Buehler piques my interest. So we'll see what happens for there for sure. But I think those are the 3 areas that they can hit to make this team a little better.
Okay. All right. It sounds like you and I may be kind of on the same page as I pose this hypothetical to you. If the Braves are only able to address left field or they are only able to address shortstop, hypothetically, which direction would you go in?
That's a really interesting scenario because I would say is, are we spending a lot of money here or are we just trying to address a need? Because if we're spending money, I really like the shortstop option of Willie Adames. I feel like that can make your infield really good. And then you could roll Jared Kelnick out there in left field or Ramon Laureano. Both guys would be serviceable with a better hitter at shortstop for sure. But I feel like the Braves are more likely to address left field in this scenario and keep Orlando. But my dream option would probably to be a better shortstop offensively. Orlando's great defensively. It's the offense that team seems to hurt you at times when either somebody's hurt or the obviously a natural in baseball somebody cools off and you're asking him to step up with runners in scoring position in particular.
That's my whole thing right there, because I feel like when this lineup is at optimum health, I think you can afford Orlando Arcia's offense to get Orlando Arcia's defense. And whatever he does at the plate, his glove and his arm are not in question. So I feel like if you could only address one or the other, I would rather go get a left fielder that elevates things, because again, when you've got a lineup with Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Acuna, Harris, those guys, when everybody's doing what they're doing, I feel like you can get by with a guy who can potentially give you 20 home runs, by the way, at shortstop.
Yeah, I thought it might be interesting to see if they maybe potentially went after Teoscar Hernandez, but obviously just winning a World Series with the Dodgers and playing well and doing so. I know the Dodgers have been rumored to be in the Juan Soto chase, but I think the Dodgers could easily suffice and just bring back Teoscar Hernandez, who had a great year for them and really carried their team at points of the year. I don't know. It's one of those things with the Braves is, do they want to spend money? Do they want to go big fish? I don't know if they have the assets to make trades. I know they've kind of depleted the farm system over the years. It just depends on how much money they want to spend and where they're going to use it to address things.
I don't think money is necessarily an issue. I mean, I don't think they're going to be in the Juan Soto chase, but to your point about Teoscar Hernandez, that could work. And I mean, if the Dodgers sign Soto, then they're not going to bring Hernandez back. And I don't think that would be a bad signing for the Braves. I'd never really thought about that until here the last 24 hours when I heard that name connected to the Braves possibly. And I think that'd be a great pickup if it were to go that way. But again, I just feel like with enough bats, Arcia's offensive deficiencies become less of an issue. And again, with his glove, with his arm, I think you can live with a guy who, can run into 15, 18, 20 home runs if he's not, pressing and trying to hit 20 home runs. And if he's hitting in the 8 or 9 spot for you, just let him sit down there and let him make every play in the field, and whatever you get out of him offensively is a bonus, I feel like. But, I've liked Arcia since he was in Milwaukee.
So let me ask you this one question. And obviously, this guy that I'm about to mention is a free agent, and his agent is Scott Boras. So that is attached with the name that the Braves do not like to deal with. But for instance, if I propose
stop. It's not even a do not like to deal with. It's a do not deal with.
So if I propose the name to you, Ha-Sung Kim, who is a free agent from the Padres, who is a Gold Glover defensively, historically has hit for a better average than Orlando Arcia and has better speed, would that obviously that's not going to break the bank like an Adames contract will. Does that pique your interest if I say he's a Gold Glover defensively and he's a little better offensively and has better speed?
Better speed, if we're going to utilize it, kind of catches my attention, because I like to run. Not for me personally, but I like watching teams.
The Braves do not.
Yeah, I know. And that's my thing. That's why I'm not even sure if bringing somebody with speed in really matters. I wish the Braves were a little bit more active on the base path, stealing bases, going first to third, different things like that. I think we rely too much on the long ball. And, last year that worked. This year it did not. So, that would be a name that would pique my interest, but again, I think the name that gets Anthopoulos' attention more is Scott Boras. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, I think. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason again with the Charlie Morton situation, with the Max Fried situation. I don't think he's coming back. I don't think he wants to come back. And what direction they go
You want him to come back.
I don't know how you couldn't want a Max Fried as part of your starting rotation. But I'm not going to
numbers leave a lot to be desired. I know he started the game that won the World Series in 2021, but his numbers do leave a lot to be desired in the postseason. And that's what you get paid off of, by the way. You don't get paid for regular season.
The postseason is what you get paid for. It is where you make your legend, so to speak. And he's not been great, but I think you kind of have to grow into maybe that mode a little bit. There are a lot of guys who weren't great in the postseason from the get that got better as they had more exposure in those moments and that kind of thing. And again, I just feel like he is good enough that the postseason is probably more the exception than the norm for him, or what you've gotten out of him has been more the exception than the norm. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with him being back, but I'm not going to shed any tears if he's not, because I don't know that he wants to be here. So, you mentioned the Jets and that 21-13 win over Houston last night being a much needed victory for them. And I don't think anybody would argue that. I didn't get to see it because I was in Loretta last night, but Wade all but called this win when we talked about this game yesterday. The Jets coming into it 2-6, the Texans coming into it 6-2, but looking a little shaky, particularly with some of the injuries that they've incurred here of late. The Jets aren't far out from really making some noise in a bad AFC East, it feels like.
Yeah, I think I was listening to the national media on ESPN just a couple of days ago, and they were talking about how the Jets, if they won this matchup, will be just one game out of the win column for being in the playoffs. And if you think how disastrous their season has been to start, if they're a game out of the playoffs as we reach the trade deadline, they're still very much in this. I think you could have made the case that if they lost this game on a short week against a banged up and depleted Houston Texans team that is without their top two wide receivers, that there might have been some more firings across New Jersey, not New York, New Jersey, and that they might be sellers at the deadline next week really quickly. So this was a win that they needed to try to give them some momentum. I'm still not a believer, though, in the Jets until they can show me that they can string things together offensively. And that defense has really taken a step back from last year's defense as well. If they can string some things together offensively, I mean, they have all the names you want: Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, but you still have to go out there and do it on the grass.
Absolutely. Big ball game tomorrow night over at Nissan Stadium as Tennessee State hosts UT Martin in a Ohio Valley Conference Big South matchup. Both those teams are chasing Southeast Missouri State at the top of the standings. SEMO is 8-1 overall. TSU is 6-2 overall. UT Martin is 5-3. SEMO is undefeated in OVC action. Martin and TSU each 2-1. The Tigers are ranked number 25 in this week's FCS Stats Perform Top 25. UT Martin is the first team receiving votes, so I guess technically they are number 26. So yeah, this is a huge matchup for TSU coming off a open week. Excuse me. I just violated one of my own no-nos. Coming off of an open week and a win up at Howard the week before.
Yeah, I know this Tennessee State team is, really good. I mean, if you think of their two losses, they should have, as a member that's 5 to 10 minutes away from Tennessee State's campus, they should have beat Tennessee Tech. I think that was a game that they would tell you that they needed to win. And then there's no shame when you go to play North Dakota State and losing to a really quality team. But, credit to Eddie George in that program. I went to watch them last year when they played up at Notre Dame. So we all know how that one went, but he's slowly built, and that fan base is slowly getting excited about the job that they're doing and that the team that they have this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of crowd they get out at Nissan for that matchup tomorrow. Again, 5 o'clock kickoff for UT Martin and Tennessee State over at Nissan Stadium. Let's take a break here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. When we return to the Lee Company studios, we'll be joined by John Clay of the Lexington Herald-Leader, talking a little Kentucky and Tennessee. And it's not the battle for any kind of barrels or anything like that, apparently, but it is a pretty big Southeastern Conference matchup, so we'll talk about it when we come back. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Riley, a certified physician associate here at Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee. We have a couple locations, Murfreesboro, McMinnville, as well as Franklin. We treat people of all ages. We're excited to get you back on your feet and hope we can help you today.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
He shoots, and he scores!
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com.
With Lee Company technology, the best handymen are hands-off. Lee Company techs have been using visual findings and other smart technology tools for years to add transparency and virtually take customers along. You see what we see, whether we're in a crawl space or on a roof. With Lee Company, technology helps us help you, no matter what's happening in the world or at your house.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
The weekend update continues here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm Maurice Patton. That's David Wilson, and we are pleased to have with us now from the Lexington Herald-Leader, John Clay to talk a little bit about the Kentucky Wildcats as they head to Neyland Stadium for a 6:45 Central Time kickoff tomorrow against the Tennessee Volunteers. John, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, guys. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Appreciate you taking some time with us today, man.
Sure.
What what has happened to Kentucky?
Well, after they upset Ole Miss, got a big victory, down in Oxford, beat Ole Miss 20-17. It's all kind of falling apart. They had a week off after the Ole Miss game, and at the time we thought that was a good week off. They wouldn't have a letdown their next game, have a chance to maybe get some guys healthy, that sort of thing, kind of refocus. But it may have been a bad thing. They lost to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, as you guys know, playing really well right now. Vanderbilt came in and beat them there at Kroger Field for the their second trip in a row that Vandy's beat Kentucky there in Lexington. Then Kentucky went down to Florida and basically got stomped by Florida, which was a big surprise. Not necessarily that they lost to Florida, but just they lost 48-20. Then last week against Auburn, kind of the same story. They got up to a 10-0 lead, then gave up 24 points and lost 24-10. So injuries are a problem. Their main problem right now is offense. They're having a hard time scoring. They're the only team in the SEC that hasn't scored more than 20 points in a conference game. So if I had to put my finger on one thing that's the problem, guys, I would say it's the offense.
Is there a concern, John, that Mark Stoops isn't resonating with this team at this point?
Well, that's been brought up. I mean, he's got a bunch of guys from the transfer portal. As you guys know, we're in the NIL era, and Mark has been kind of vocal in his complaints about about having to deal with NIL and that sort of thing. So that's been brought up. I don't know if that's the main factor. I think they've had some, they're on their fifth offensive coordinator in the last 5 years. That obviously hasn't helped. Brock Vandagriff, the quarterback that came in from Georgia, played at Georgia as a backup. First to Stetson Bennett and then to Carson Beck. He hasn't quite developed as quickly as they had hoped. They've had some injuries on defense, which have hurt them. But that's been brought up. Is Mark's message not getting through to these guys like it got through to some of his previous teams?
And beyond that, we had Ben McKee from GoVols 24/7 on earlier in the week, and to your point about his concerns with NIL and the transfer portal, that maybe he has checked out?
You hear a lot of buzz about that, or a lot of talk about that around the program. And I think Mark has led to that by his complaints about NIL. He had a interview with the Cat's Paws, Daryl Bird, for their preseason issue, where he complained about all the things that coaches have to do now, with NIL and dealing with the transfer portal and the way recruiting is set up. Some of the things that we have seen other coaches, Tony Bennett, the basketball coach of Virginia, being the most recent, is kind of giving that as a reason why he decided that he would step down. Even Nick Saban before that, as Nick said, that maybe the requirements of the job now are not the same as they used to be. But I don't know that. I don't think Mark is checked out from a standpoint that I think Mark is definitely a competitor. I think he definitely wants to win. But that those complaints that he's made about NIL has kind of fed that narrative to where people think, is Mark even thinking about maybe stepping down at the end of the year, or that this is it for him. So I don't know, but you hear a lot of talk. Let's just say you hear a lot of talk about that around Lexington, especially when you got a team that's 3-5 overall and 1-5 in the SEC.
Right.
Yeah, John, as we kind of rip open the box score from last week's loss to Auburn, I think the one glaring note is Jacquez Hunter rushed for 278 yards against this Kentucky defense. Now, a week later, you're heading into Neyland Stadium and you're facing Dylan Sampson, who has 17 touchdowns to this point, 838 yards rushing for the Vols. I guess that's the one note that Coach Heupel probably looked on tape, and I think that's the one thing that Tennessee is going to try to exploit, don't you think?
Yeah, Auburn came out, the game was a 10-10 tie at half last Saturday. Auburn came out in the second half on the first drive. They took the second half kickoff, and they just ran the ball down Kentucky's throat. Jacquez Hunter had 3 runs of 40 yards or more in the second half. That was the thing, in talking to defensive coordinator Brad White after the game. He said the thing that surprised him the most was the way that Auburn was able to knock their defensive front off the ball. And I expect Tennessee to come in and try to do the same thing, especially after seeing that Auburn tape. And as you mentioned, the way Dylan Sampson has run this year. So that's definitely a concern. And Kentucky has some injuries that have kind of fed into that. One of their injuries is Maxwell Harrison, who's a defensive back, who's a cornerback. He's their best secondary player. And you think, well, how does that hurt them in the run game? I think they have tried to protect their secondary by not putting as many people in the box, playing more zone defense instead of man-to-man. And therefore, I think Auburn especially was able to exploit that. Florida hit a lot of big passes on them, which I think exploited the secondary, which I think then Brad White thought Auburn game, we're not going to let the same thing happen that happened to us at Florida. And Auburn was able to take advantage of that by running the ball down their throat. The other thing is they're very thin at linebacker right now. De'Eric Jackson is hurt. He's a starting linebacker. He's kind of the leader of the defense, or one of the leaders on defense. And J.J. Weaver is hurt, defensive end pass rusher. Neither one of those guys is going to play in the game on Saturday. So that's another factor as well.
You know, yeah. John, as you talk about the quarterback situation with Vandegrift, I mean, how much of a factor is Wimsatt, the number 2 guy? I mean, is there a possibility of them going to him, giving him more snaps, making a move to him?
Well, they played Wimsatt at quarterback the entire second half against Auburn. He had 2 3-and-outs, and then he had a good drive at the fourth quarter, but ended up throwing an interception down on the goal line. Before that, they used Wimsatt in some mop-up duty in the loss to South Carolina, where they lost 31-6 the second week of the season. Other than that, they'd use Wimsatt as a Wildcat quarterback. He can't transfer from Rutgers. He's an Owensboro kid. He's a Kentucky kid. He in 3 years where he was basically the starter at Rutgers, but he couldn't complete 50% of his passes. But he is a big athletic kid who can run the ball, and they were trying to use him that way, except for the last game against Auburn. I think they basically thought, we're going to try something else because this isn't working, and they put him in the second half. He was okay. They haven't told us who the starter is going to be this week, but Brock Vandegrift did talk to us after practice on Tuesday, where Gavin Wimsatt did not. So we're guessing that they're probably going to go back to Brock as being the starter in this game.
John, we kind of talked about this just a minute ago, but obviously, you know, anytime you go into Neyland at night, it is a formidable environment. We saw it a couple weeks ago with Alabama coming in there, that crowd noise is an issue, penalties is an issue, definitely having to go silent. How is Kentucky offensively prepped for that this week? Obviously, with the night game at Neyland, with that crowd likely to be really jacked up.
With a lot of Rocky Top at practice. They have, we do our interviews after practice. We stand outside the gate right before practice ends, and we can hear Rocky Top being played over and over and over again. You know, I think 2 years ago when Kentucky went down there, they had Will Levis at quarterback, and things got away from him in a hurry in that game. They ended up losing 44-6. You know, that's something that, you know, they can't afford to do something like that again, you know, where it let things snowball on them. But you know, the funny thing about Mark Stoops' teams of late is they play much better on the road than they played at home. They're something like 2-9 or 2-10 in their last 11 or 12 SEC home games, when they're 6-6 on the road in their last 12 SEC road games. Like I mentioned, they did beat Ole Miss earlier in the year, when Ole Miss, I think, was like number 6 in the country down in Oxford, but then turned around and did not play well at all, you know, at Florida. They got another tough SEC road game coming up at Texas later in the year. And that's another thing that's kind of a factor in this game. Kentucky's been to a bowl game 8 straight years under Mark Stoops. They're 3-5 right now. They got to play Tennessee tomorrow night. They have to go to Texas on the 23rd. They got Louisville at home. Louisville's lost to Kentucky 5 straight years. You know, Louisville is going to be chomping at the bit to break that streak at the end of the year. They do have Murray State. But it's going to be rough to get. It's going to be hard to get to those 6 wins. They really need to. They're going to have to pull off an upset against the Tennessee or a Texas, or maybe even both, if they're going to have a chance to get the 6 wins.
If there's one glaring thing about this Tennessee team, it's their lack of get-off, if you won't say, in the first half. They've been unable to capitalize on drives and score points, whether against Florida, Arkansas, or even against Alabama a couple weeks ago. How is Kentucky trying to script that and game plan for that, and how can they take advantage of a slow start to stay in this game?
I think that's a really good point. I think Kentucky, they need to get off to a fast start and not let Tennessee get off to a fast start. Like I mentioned, that's kind of what happened to them a couple of years down there, where things snowballed on them. They want to get off to a better start. They got off to a better start. They got off to a bad start at Florida They wanted to get off to a better start against Auburn, and they did. They were up 10-0 early, and then let things get away from them in the second half. But especially when you're playing on the road, night game, Neyland Stadium, Tennessee, it's very important for Kentucky to get off to a good start. Not necessarily take the crowd out of the game, but keep the crowd from going crazy. And I'm sure Tennessee wants to do the exact opposite, as you mentioned. They haven't always gotten off to a fast start. I'm sure Josh Heupel has made a point of that to his team this week.
John Clay of the Lexington Herald-Leader joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, as we get ready for Kentucky and Tennessee tomorrow night, 6:45 start. You can see it on the SEC network. And John, you kind of stole my thunder there a little bit, because I was getting ready to get into the bold prospects for this Kentucky team. Again, 3-5 with 4 games remaining: Tennessee, Murray, Texas, and Louisville. And it's tough, realistically speaking, to find 3 wins in these Final Four.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We kind of, Mark Stoops sort of addressed that when we talked to him yesterday. We usually talk to Mark on Mondays, but his mother passed away last week, and the funeral was up in Youngstown on Monday. So we ended up, the only time we got him this week was yesterday. And he said, when we were asking him about this and that, he said, guys, the main thing, I just want us to play better. We got to play better. And the results will take care of themselves after that, especially on defense. We talked about the injuries and so forth, and he said we just need to play better. But yeah, it's rough when you look to try to find victories. Are they capable? Yeah, I mean, they proved that at Ole Miss earlier in the year. I mean, they were able to go into Oxford and win, so they are capable. But you can't really, especially on the way they played the last 3 games and the way this offense has struggled, you can't really say with any degree of confidence that yes, they have think that they have a real good chance of beating either Tennessee or Texas. And Louisville, Louisville's kind of been up and down this year. They played a lot of close games, but they score a lot of points. Jeff Brom always does a great job with his offense. So that's a very tricky game at the end of the year, even though it's at Kroger Field as well.
So many of the Big Blue Mist have probably turned their attention inside to the hardwood with new coach Mark Pope and all of that. And I know that you've got some responsibilities with that as well. Are the feelings a lot more positive over there as the season gets ready to get cranked up next week?
No, yeah, I think everybody. I think it's funny when when Cal left to go to Arkansas, and then talking about different coaching candidates and so forth. Whether it was Danny Hurley or Scott Drew down at Baylor, even some talk about Billy Donovan coming back into the college game. And then when it first that kind of surfaced that Mark Pope was a legitimate candidate, that he might be really high on the list, a lot of people, I don't know if disappointed the right word, but a lot of them were kind of puzzled by that. I mean, Mark's never won an NCAA tournament game. But when Mark arrived and we had that press conference, that welcoming press conference at Rupp Arena where the fans packed Rupp Arena, it's all been pretty much positive, enthusiastic since then. He's done a great job of speaking to the fan base. He keeps saying, I know the assignment. The assignment's about winning championships, which is what the fans wanted to hear after John Calipari and the one and done and that sort of thing. So, and they play a different style of basketball, a lot of 3-pointers. They've had 2 exhibition games. Not against the greatest competition. They played Kentucky Wesleyan in the first one. They did play Minnesota State the other night, the reigning Division II champions. And in those 2 games, they shot 79 3-pointers. They shot 42 the first night against Kentucky Wesleyan. They shot 37 the other night. They were 21 of 42 from 3 in that first game. They're kind of like Alabama. They want to shoot threes or get layups. There's not a whole lot in between. And they want to get the ball up the floor very, very quickly. So there's a lot of enthusiasm. I think they're all new players. There's not a single player on this team that was on the team last year. So I think there's also a lot of curiosity about how this team is going to play, the style they play, so forth. But things have turned around here so much, guys, that Rick Pitino came back for Big Blue Madness, and he was cheered. They cheered him because Mark Pope loves Rick Pitino. He played Rick Pitino, and Rick didn't always get that welcome when he came back as the coach of Louisville. There were not many cheers for Rick Pitino then. But I don't know that all has been forgiven for that. But Mark Pope has at least turned the fan base around for the moment about Rick Pitino. So, the opener's Monday night, and there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of curiosity to see how they're going to play on Monday.
Sounds like the Wildcats kind of took a page from the last team that they played last year, Oakland, with all those 3-pointers.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're going to shoot threes, and they don't really run a lot of plays either. It's pretty much of a free form offense, the way they play. And I'm interested to see how they are defensively. They've got Lamont Butler, was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year in the Mountain West. You might remember him from at San Diego State. He had a shot to win a Final Four game a couple of years ago. And they have Amari Williams, although Williams got hurt the other night, but they don't think it's anything serious, who was the Player of the Year defensively in his conference as well. So, they got a mix, and this is by far the oldest team Kentucky's had in a long time. Might be the oldest team Kentucky's ever had. We'll see. But, they kind of took – they did. You're right. They took a page out of Oakland's book.
You talk about the turnover here, and, again, between the transfer portal and the coaching change, that's kind of got to be expected. But I feel like that was one of the concerns that the Kentucky fan base had with Calipari, was not being able to get to know these guys from year to year because of the one and dones and that kind of thing. Do you feel like Mark is kind of going to get a little bit of a honeymoon period with this turnover?
He'll get a honeymoon period. Although, you guys know, more. This is Kentucky basketball. They lose a couple of games, everybody will be like, what's going on? Are we sure this is the right guy? But I think because of Mark, he's a Kentucky guy. He played on that national championship team. He's done everything right. He's done a great job of involving the former players. He's done a great job of talking to the fans. I think I think there'll definitely be a honeymoon period. I think a lot of fans are excited about having a veteran team when that, just wasn't the case very often with Cal. And with his one and done teams. Now, a lot of these guys are going to be one and done too, because they're going to be out of eligibility after this year. But the way he's recruiting, he seems to be recruiting a little bit different too, looking more at guys he thinks that maybe will stay for 2-3 years instead of always getting a guy that no matter what's going to go pro, even if he's not really even ready. He has it in his mind he's going to go pro. I'm not sure that's exactly the guy that Mark is looking for.
What is recruiting looking like for next season?
Yeah, they've done a good job so far. Of course, it's always hard to tell. The big kid, the biggest recruit in state is Jasper Johnson, who is the son of Dennis Johnson. You may remember him. He played for Kentucky football back in the 90s. He was his son Jasper is one of the top-rated players in the country. That was a big gift for Mark, and he was able to get a commitment from him. So I think they feel pretty good about their recruiting for next year so far.
Okay. John Clay of the Lexington Herald-Leader joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. When are you headed south?
I'll be headed to Knoxville in the morning, so I'll be there at Nayland tomorrow night. The last time I came to Knoxville for a game was for the UK Tennessee basketball game. I hit a giant pothole on Jellicoe, going up Jellicoe Mountain. Luckily, a man there who lived nearby just happened to be behind me. He stopped and helped me change my tire. Not that I couldn't change it myself, but he quickened the process, and I was able to make it to the game on time. I got my fingers crossed that nothing like that will happen tomorrow.
Oh, that's awful. You didn't bend the rim or anything like that?
No, I was very fortunate. I didn't bend the rim. I had to go. He directed me to where to go, and I found a Walmart in La Follette, Tennessee that was able to replace the tire. Luckily, I left early because my plan was I was going to eat lunch somewhere along the way or eat lunch when I got to Knoxville. And so I got there right before tip-off of the Kentucky-Tennessee game. So I'm very thankful for Jimmy, who stopped and helped me. There were a couple other people who hit that same pothole and had their tires blown out as well. But so I was very lucky. So like I said, fingers crossed nothing like that happens tomorrow.
Absolutely. Let's hope that you get there without incident tomorrow night. And John, we appreciate you taking some time with us, man. Thank you. And again, safe travels tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Mark, how are we looking?
We got a couple minutes, 2-3 minutes.
We got 2 or 3 minutes because as we mentioned, Wade is joining us for the final segment, and that, if you hadn't figured it out, will be a pre-recorded segment. So we are going to run up to that, and Mark is going to tell me when to shut things down. But in the meantime, a couple of things that we didn't get to touch on earlier. The Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame presents a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award to the top collegiate center in the country and a Lisa Leslie Award to the top women's collegiate center. And we've got some names of local interest on both of those lists because former Ensworth, former Vanderbilt, and Belmont current Ole Miss forward Malik Dia is among 20 preseason candidates for the 2025 Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award. Also on that list is ex-UT current Arkansas forward Jonas Adu. So, as well as Larry Nerd, Robbie Avila, formerly of Indiana State, now at St. Louis. He is on that list as well. So it's a pretty illustrious list there that Malik Dia is keeping up with there. On the women's side, for the Lisa Leslie Award, among those 20 on that watch list for the preseason is Middle Tennessee State's Anastasia Boldareva, as well as Iowa State sophomore Audie Crooks, among others. So
we might want to go ahead and hand that one to one Juju Watkins.
Juju is a guard. She is not on here.
Oh, oof. I'm sorry. I misspoke.
Yeah, this is strictly for front court players, apparently. It says centers, but I don't know that all of these necessarily are centers, and I'm sure Malik Dia is not on the guys' side. But
yeah,
nevertheless, quite an illustrious list on both the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar list for the guys and the Lisa Leslie list for the ladies. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on here during the early portion of the season. There's an asterisk at the bottom of this list. Players can play their way onto and off the list at any point in the 2024-25 season. So
the list is fluid.
Very much so. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Kind of crazy to me that the basketball season is tipping off next week at the college. I'm not ready for it. I'm still like football mode, and with the college football playoff and all of that about to come out, basketball is the furthest thing from my mind right now.
You know, I'm not necessarily ready for it either, but I'm hoping we can get ready for it because Monday, Wade and I will be broadcasting remotely from Murphy Center. The MTSU men are taking on Oglethorpe University in an 11 o'clock start Monday morning, and we're going to hang out and watch the game, and then we're going to come to you from press row afterwards. So be sure and join us at 2 o'clock for that. Yeah, we're trying to get ready for basketball. It's a tough go, like you said, with the college football playoff projected field, the first one being announced next week, and football is in full swing at every level. So we'll be keeping up with that, but we're trying to get ready for basketball. Kind of kicking and screaming, but here we go. Again, that's going to do it for David and I. Come back after this break on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, as Wade and I give you our wonder slate. We try to pick 10 winners from this weekend's college football action against the spread. Be sure and check that out when we come back after this break, and Wade and I will see y'all again Monday at 2 o'clock.
So, you want to be a part of the Busy Bee team, huh? Well, how do you see yourself fitting into the organization? Oh, I get it. You want to be a weather bee.
This holiday season, the largest lantern festival in the country returns to Nashville Zoo. Experience more than 1,000 all-new, handcrafted lanterns, towering creatures, magical worlds, and a North Pole village. At the center of it all, the Smashville Ice Rink. Welcome back to Zoolumination at Nashville Zoo. Bigger, brighter, and better than ever.
Hey, welcome back into the weekend update. Surprise, surprise. Along with Maurice Patton, it's Wade Neely for the final segment because Wade couldn't miss the Wonder Slate. We had such a good weekend last weekend that we wanted to see if we could keep the momentum up. Each of us going 7-3 to get to the records that you can see there on the screen, matching 40, 38, and 2 records heading into week 9 of the college football season. And it's the Wonder Slate as we pick 10 of this weekend's matchups against the spread. So with no further ado, Wade, talk to us.
Let's rock and roll. And you're right. We end up with the same record, but we took different paths to get there. Big miss by me. I trusted Vegas, which usually is correct, but they were dead wrong on UCF as BYU waxed them. And then also, man, I had a soft spot for Florida State. That will be the last time I say those words this season. So we end up in the same spot, and we got a good slate again this week. There will be entertaining games, but not from top to bottom. The best we've seen. We've kind of gotten spoiled these last 2 or 3 weeks, but we have some big ones nonetheless, and it's time to get into the picks. We begin with Big Noon Kickoff, 11 a.m. on Fox. It is your biggest game of the week. It's number 4, Ohio State in Happy Valley, taking on number 3, Penn State. Mo, the Bucks are favored by 3.5. Do they get the win? Do they cover on the road?
Man, James Franklin's got to win a big game at some point, and it might as well be this one. I'm going to take the Nittany Lions at home against Ohio State.
Man, that is music to my ears. But, hey, this is strictly business. I got to take Ohio State. You make a great point, though. Someone's got to win this game. Ryan Day has had a great record against almost everybody except Michigan and Oregon this year, I suppose. James Franklin has also lost a lot of big games, too. He's only beat Ohio State once. Something's got to give. I think it'll be a fun game. I think Ohio State is, man, they're just top to bottom. They are still one of the most talented teams in the country. I think that counts for something. I think maybe they find a way to cover 3.5. I'm taking the Buckeyes.
All right.
Up next, 11 a.m., still early, and we got a good one in the SEC. You can see it on ESPN. Does Ole Miss go into Fayetteville and cover 7 versus the Razorbacks?
That's a tough one because, I want to believe in Sam Pittman and the Hogs, and I like the quarterback, but I think Ole Miss kind of feels like they've got a score to settle. They stubbed their toe here at points this fall. I think the Rebels cover 7 here.
I like what you said about Arkansas, but, man, I just have a few – feels like that mojo they had earlier in the year has kind of slipped through their fingertips. Ole Miss doesn't exactly have the same swag that they had earlier, but I think the talent factor, kind of like Ohio State and Penn State, plays out. I think Ole Miss does find a way to cover 7. I sure wish that was 6.5, I'll tell you that much. But I'm taking the Rebels as well. Up next, 11:45 on the SEC Network. Does Vanderbilt go to Auburn, who is favored by 7? How does this game play out?
I think Vanderbilt wins this game outright. I don't think Auburn's very good. And I don't think they're very good, and I think they have an inflated opinion of themselves, and I think that's a bad combination against a Vanderbilt team that's really been workmanlike, I think, and they've really focused well on the task at hand. And after last week's game that I feel like they kind of feel like they let get away, I think they go on the road and they win this ball game by 7+, maybe double digits.
Ooh, the reverse spread. I like that. That would pay handsomely. if you throw some shekels that way. I'm going to take Auburn in this game. I'm going to get burned twice if it happens, but oh well, I'll burn on this hill, I guess. But Vegas is trying to tell us something. I don't know what they're trying to tell us, but kind of like that BYU UCF game last week. You know me, Mo. I like to dip my hand in the cookie jar yet again. And so I'm going to believe Vegas. I'm going to take Auburn. And when Vanderbilt wins outright, like you said, I'll be crying on Monday's show. But I'm going to go with the Tigers and see how this plays out. Should be a fun game at 11:45, again, on the SEC network. Speaking of the SEC, we now roll into afternoon slate. We talked about this game earlier in the week. It will still be played at Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Florida is an underdog. That's not shocking, but they're an underdog of 15 points. Do the Bulldogs pour it on the Gators this weekend?
Yeah, I think they do. I think Georgia kind of feels like they've got a little bit of a score to settle. I think, in a league where style points have not been at a premium, I think they, and it's like you were saying earlier, I think I'd feel a little bit better about this if it were 14 than 15, but I think Georgia finds a way to cover this.
I'm with you. I'm taking Georgia. I kind of see not a path to victory by any stretch, but I see Florida, and maybe it's just nostalgia kicking in, but I could see the Gators giving them a little run for their money. I got excited when I saw that Florida comes into this game on a bye week. I got less excited, though, when I saw Georgia was also on a bye last week. So I think that balances out, and I think Georgia is, supremely more talented than the Gators. Give me the 15, and hope they win by 16.
Let me just say, I think Georgia's defense against the youngster at quarterback, DJ Lagway, I think that does not work in Florida's favor.
Yeah, one of those good luck kid type situations, right? Speaking of good luck, I was in the big house the last time these teams met in Ann Arbor back in 2007, and Oregon wasn't favored that day, but they're favored by 14.5 this weekend. Does the number one team in the nation, the Oregon Ducks, go into Ann Arbor and cover that number in your mind, Mo?
In a Big Ten conference matchup, that hook is a concern. But I think with the issues that Michigan has at quarterback right now, I think Oregon covers.
I'm taking Oregon as well, mainly just because, I still got love for my Wolverines, but I'm not going to pick them until I want to believe, but I want to, as I've told some people this week, Halloween is on Thursday, but the Day of the Dead is celebrated on November 1st and November 2nd. Michigan will get sent to the afterlife by the Ducks, I think, in this game. And so I think Oregon covers 14.5 at 2:30. Speaking of squads in Michigan, speaking of one of Mo's sneaky favorite teams, the number 13 Hoosiers cover 8 points versus Sparty at 2:30 on Peacock.
I believe they do, man. I am not a Big Ten football fan by any stretch, but man, this Indiana team has really got me captivated right now. Curtis Rourke is supposed to be back from the thumb injury, but Taven Jackson played really well this past weekend against Washington, I think. I think regardless of who it is at quarterback, Indiana gets it done at East Lansing.
I'm picking Sparty in this game with the 8. I don't like it, and I want to believe in Indiana. Maybe I just will live in bliss until it happens. But I just feel like they're due to have a small bump in the road. And Sparty is just gamey enough that I think maybe they cover 8. But as you guys well know, the last time I went against Indiana, they won by approximately $1 billion versus Nebraska.
Was that the Nebraska game?
Yeah. I'm taking Michigan State. I'll look foolish for doing so, but I think they find a way to keep it close. We shall see how that one plays out. That gets us into the night games now. Coming up, Louisville at number 11, Clemson. Clemson is favored by 11.5. How do you handicap that one?
Man, it's well documented that I'm not a big Clemson or Dabo fan. I think Louisville a couple of weeks ago played Miami a little bit closer than folks expected. I don't know that Louisville wins this ball game, but I don't know that Clemson wins it by 11.5 either. Give me the Cardinals here.
I am with you. I'm taking Louisville. I think Clemson has turned a little bit of a corner, but they can't get too big for their britches just yet, as you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And Louisville is just scrappy enough that this number is dangerous enough. I think Louisville, covers this somehow, some way. And if Clemson wins, we'll tip our cap. But I'm with you. I'm taking the Cards. Sneaky big game this week. The number one team in all the SEC, the Texas A&M Aggies, they're ranked number 10 in the land. They're favored by 2.5 at South Carolina. It's 6:30 on ABC. Who do you like?
I think this is going to be a good ball game. If Texas A&M wins by a field goal, they cover, and I feel like they win the ball game. I think it might be a field goal. So, but give me the Aggies here.
I want to pick South Carolina. This seems like a classic trap situation, but everything what you just said makes total sense, and I agree wholeheartedly. Texas A&M, in a weird way, this is the game we find a lot about them in my mind, and I think the Aggies somehow continue their journey and continue rolling. I think they win this game, and I think they cover the 2.5. Up next, Kentucky at Tennessee. Number 7 Vols are favored by 16.5. Ain't no way Kentucky goes into Knoxville and covers that, right?
No, I don't think there is. I think, we talked to Ben McKee earlier in the week. It feels like if the wheels have not fallen off, they are awfully wobbly in Lexington. And no, I don't think they cover this at all. I think Tennessee wins this by at least 17 and maybe even more than that. And if they don't, it certainly won't be from a lack of trying. I like Tennessee to cover here.
Give me Tennessee as well. Any other week, any other time, I'd say, maybe let Kentucky sneak around the chicken coop a little bit. But I think Tennessee, who's been a little shaky on the offensive side of the ball, but I think they find a way to win this game by 17 because I'm like you. I think Kentucky either has checked out or is getting ready to check out. So give me the Vols as well. Final game, the only 2 games this week featuring ranked versus ranked. This is the second one. Does Pitt stay undefeated at number 20 SMU? SMU is favored by 7.5 Saturday night.
That's crazy to me. Now, I don't think Pitt is going to have another 5-interception game like they were able to benefit from against Kyle McCord and Syracuse, but 7.5 is a lot, I feel like, for SMU in this one. I like Pitt to cover, if not win outright.
I'm taking SMU and our dear friend Ashley Combs. Sorry, girl, but I'm going against your Panthers. I think SMU, something feels a little fishy. And for a team to be undefeated and a 7.5-point underdog, it kind of leads me to believe a little bit of a paper tiger situation. And I think SMU covers this game. And if so, we'll be okay. But if not, Pitt will remain undefeated. Pitt and Clemson kind of maybe streaking toward an ACC showdown. It should be fun. That caps the 10-game wonder slate. Some good games on this batch this week, even though they might not be household name games, if you will.
Now, this is not one of the greater schedules that we've had or will have this fall, but it's there's some sneaky good ball games on here. So we'll see what we come up with and come out of this weekend with. That's going to do it for the Wonder Slate, and that's going to do it for the weekend update edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Again, that's Wade Neely. I'm Maurice Patton. We appreciate y'all checking in with us, and we will see y'all Monday at 2 o'clock.